Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything.
Good morning, rooted men. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I see 9, 10 people online already. And 1, 2, 3, 4 comments. All right, we're good. All right. It's a beautiful day out there. I just let the dog out. He took 2 steps out of the deck and looked back at me and looked, what are you doing to me? I never had a dog that hated water as much as this one, including baths, anything to do with water. Just no part of it. I watched my son's Labrador years ago, and it would relax in the pond when nobody's we'd just flop over and lay down in the pond, and we thought, I think, oh gosh, another bath for the dog. But this one, you don't have to worry about him going in the water. No, it's no part of it. What a beautiful start. So let's see who's online. You ready? Okay. Chris Connolly's here. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Chris. And good morning, Chuck B. Shalom, men of God. Ken says, good morning, fellow brothers in arms. And Dave Donnelly says, good morning. And that's all we have for comments. But good morning, everybody. I'm glad to have you with me this morning. It's kind of a fun bit of scripture here today because I am totally unqualified to talk about this. But I think I can relate to it, and I'm hoping that will be enough. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our books, or I'm going to pull up the screen that says, "Oh, good morning, Bert. Glad you're with us. Good morning, gentlemen," he says. All right. So we're going to open up our screen to Galations 4, verses 15 through 20. In this one, Paul is talking about the church in Galatia and how they've been infiltrated by false teachers. Let me see if I can find that. I believe it is right here. All right. I think hopefully you can see that. It says, "What then has become of your blessedness? For I testify to you that if possible, you would have gouged out your eyes and given them to me. Have I then become..." hold on for you. Gouged out your eyes. Holy mackerel. What is he trying to say? The Judaizers obviously are the problem here. They're going in and they're taking what Paul has taught and adding a layer of the law in. So the law is required by these Judaizers. And they talk about all the Old Testament stuff that came along with the New Testament stuff. We follow the law. We still follow the law, but it's not part of our salvation. It's just a guide. We have to remember that. It's how we should live as Christians, not the proof that we are Christians. His heart is troubled by this. You can obviously tell, and he seems that it's just because of these teachings that the Judaizers have sown some discontent into the church in Galatia. The people have listened to them, and now they're starting to doubt Paul. They're starting to question Paul, and I think this is where his broken heart's coming in a little bit. And then in the next line it says, "Have I then become your enemy by telling you the truth?" So, because he's told the truth, I wonder about this statement. I wonder if he's gotten to the point where they're hostile to him because he left out the law, or because he left out all the Old Testament things, the circumcision laws and stuff like that. They didn't know these because they weren't taught these, and now this new group comes in and teaches that you have to be circumcised and you have to follow the law, and they're going, "Well, why did he leave that out?" It's curious. It presents more questions to what was really going on. He doesn't go into detail here. He says, "They make much of you, but for no good purpose. They want to shut you out, that you may make much of them." I had to read that like 4 or 5 times. I'm sorry. They make much of you, but for no good purpose. They want to shut you out and make you make much of them. So what he's trying to say, and what I was trying to say, if you picked up on that, is they pump him up. They build him up through compliments, and they push them and encourage them, but for the wrong reasons. They're doing it to benefit themselves. It's always it's a great tactic in sales and stuff that you make the customer feel more important, and you make them feel special. And same with religion, you exhort people to be better. If somebody volunteers at your church and wants to do stuff, well, you tell them what a great job they're doing, even if it's an ordinary job, because you want them to grow. You want them to be a part of something, and you know that beating them down, it won't help them. Well, the Judaizers are doing this for the reason to boost them up, to make them more important. And I think that's where Paul is struggling with this. It's also, and then in 18, he says, it is always good to be made much for good purpose, and not only when I am present with you. Didn't matter whose teacher is. The purpose is the key here. And then in verse 19, it says, my little children, for whom I again in anguish, in the anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. There's no doubt that his heartbreak is evident here. He came into this church. He built this church. He brought the message to these people. And now they're pushing back. They don't like what they're hearing. They hear a message. Maybe it's a little sexier, or maybe a little more polished. I don't know what would be the word. But they've taken something that was beautiful, and they've decided that maybe it's not enough. And then it goes, and for my little children, for whom I am in anguish of childbirth, until Christ is formed in you. Until Christ is formed in them. His goal is not to get Paul identity and stuff like that. It's to get Christ. And I think there's where the conflict lies in all of this. And then verse 20 says, I wish I could be present with you now and change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. This is the part. This is definitely the part where I think Tom could have handled this very well. I can't imagine as a pastor in the life, and you know the messages he delivers, that he's gotten people that joined the church, and they've grown, and they've seen huge changes in their life, and they're making positive movements, and he's encouraging them along the way. And they're so thirsty for knowledge. They're hungry. They want to know more. And that is where these teachers can sometimes pull you aside, pull you astray. But I can't imagine, as being a pastor, preaching the message to somebody, having them accept it, having them grow and learn as we go along over the years, months, weeks, and then have them start listening to another teacher, not because they're sick of this message, but because they want to know more. They want to go deeper. And what happens is they start looking at some of the things the other teacher is saying, and a conflict grows. It'll happen, especially denominations being as different as they are. We have people that teach all kinds of crazy stuff in Christian church that's not in the book. So I would love to, I wish that, like I said, I wish he was here, because I think he could really point to this and go and say, yeah, it's happened. And this is how I felt. He says that what happens when that happens? Does the student fall away and become not a student anymore? Or does he seek the truth in between the two? Does he look at what you've been teaching him for years and what this guy is teaching? See the differences. Check the differences in Scripture, and then reject the false teaching. That would be the goal, right, of every pastor, is to make sure that the truth is being preached, even if it's us that need to be corrected. Even, I saw the Conclave movie this week, and there was one line in there that really struck me, and that was, I am guilty of the sin of certainty. Certain in my beliefs. And he was very, far more eloquent than me. And because I just thought of this, I don't have the quote in front of me. But the certainty aspect of any of us, when we think we're right, that's what the Pharisees were. They were certain that Jesus had to die. They were certain they were the only true religion. They were certain. And for the Judaizers were certain that they needed to change the gospel of grace to include circumcision in the law. And Paul saying, please, no, listen to my words. We have a tough road here because their voices are louder now than they've ever been. We look at the online resources we can get for scripture. We look at, you can go on YouTube for 5 minutes and look at messages, and you can find Christian messages that preach getting wealthy is good. We should kill all the gays. It's just crazy stuff. And all Jesus told us to do was love and keep his commandments. He didn't ask us to execute. God has never asked us to kill an entire community. He has never asked us to do anything like that. And don't want to get political because that's not what I want to do here. I just want to say that we have to be careful what we listen to. We have to be careful that God's words can be twisted by the enemy in so many different ways. And this is one example where Paul went through that. He went through I think traumatic time for him. Probably it was probably one of these churches he was so excited about. He was probably so pumped up about seeing their growth and stuff, and then have it just washed away by teachers coming in and not necessarily destroying his message, but adding to it. That's what I have for you this morning. I hope it was okay. I hope I didn't offend anybody. I wasn't trying to. I was being careful, I thought. Anyway, I see Brian Blaming came on. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, all, he says. All right, that's what I got for you. Have a firmly rooted day. And how does that go? May someone see Jesus in you today.